Namaskar, good morning, all of you. I welcome you back onto this stage. And this morning we're going to be talking to, to very brilliant women and their new books. The Court Table by Kaveri Ponnapa and Adukala by Tia Anasuya. The culinary arts have a syncretic relationship with everything that we experience, our lives, our stories, landscapes, the ecology, and the future. And in archiving these stories, anecdotes, beautiful traditional wisdom, and their relevance to today's times, both these books are going to be very invaluable because they're going to be our only resource in the future. So the organizers already introduced the authors, so I'll ask them to start speaking now. But I must tell you something, that it was a very difficult task for me. I'm a dancer. My life is about avoiding food, right? And after reading Kaveri and Tia's books, I think I was reaching, going straight in the kitchen. I was in gastronomic heaven also, apart from the beautiful stories which had me tearing up. And I think Swiggy did a lot of business. And I have put on almost 2 kgs in the last 1 week reading these books. So that's the only caveat for you all. Kaveri, have a question for you. In the court table, you perceive the table as a living archive, the table as a cultural space, and so beautifully. I wanted to ask you, the table is a space of memories, of sensory and social experiences, through the learning, the food, the cooking, the sharing. So beyond the familiar aromas and loved flavors, what hidden stories does each recipe whisper about identity, lineage, and the quiet choreography of community? And also, if you could, if you could introduce one favorite recipe of yours into this.
Thank you, Madhu. I just want to ask if I'm audible because I've been told my voice doesn't carry. So if you can't hear me, please put your hand up. So I started writing a blog in 2012. It was called The Court Table. And the reason I chose table as a title was because that was where everything happened. It was the focus of family life. It's where we gathered. And that was where, we imbibed the taste of tradition. And culinary knowledge was being passed on just through the act of eating and tasting and remembering. I think food is one of our most direct entries into a place, into memories of that place, and into memories of people who cooked those particular foods for us. And these memories, I believe, are much more than nostalgia. I think you would find that there are two levels of memory here. There's your personal memories, and then there's all the collective community memories that make up, this pool of culinary knowledge. And it's also lived experience. It's your lived personal experience, and it's generations of lived experience that go into all of these, into the making of these memories. So when you look at this culinary inheritance, the most concrete way it comes to us is in the recipe, as you said, which in today's world is pretty stark. It's a set of measurements, instructions. But when you begin talking to people about recipes, you find that there are big, broad narratives that they contain. There's cultural history. And I think what I personally love most is when you begin speaking to people, particularly of an older generation, you find personalities, you find voices, and you also find uh, autobiographical episodes within recipes. So what I'm going to do is, I don't think I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll talk about a couple of dishes, and inevitably one of them is going to be bandi curry, because being Korati, and it's possibly the best known, best loved. Uh, so we just look at it as an extremely delicious, indulgent dish. But I think a little bit that gets blurred is where it came to us from our history. It came from a place of stark survival, because men went out into this heavily forested area and they risked their lives and their persons to confront these wild boars and bring this precious meat, this protein, back home. And it was deeply, deeply respected and valued. And I think the time we remember this is at Kailpoth, which is our hunting festival. Even though we've stopped hunting decades back, the first offering of bandi curry goes to Botekarayappa, the god of the hunt and forest. The second offering goes to his pack of 6 hunting dogs. And the third offering goes to the ancestors of the clan. So I think this is where you can actually see cultural history and the reverence that is still placed upon foods, which which formed us as a people. The other one I'd like to quickly look at is smoked dried pork, which is again hugely popular. When I was speaking to an older friend whose story features in my book, she came from a Korwa family, which was unusual. They didn't hunt too much. And she married an ace marksman who would bring a lot of wild game home. And women were up, they were expected to get up at all odd hours of the night and early morning and handle this stuff. So all the sorting, cooking, smoking, drying, preserving was done by them. And all this knowledge has come to us ready-made. You take it for granted. And she actually came up with a very amusing incident about how once she came in and she found a large wild boar head stuffed into the copper steamer in her kitchen. And she was terrified. She had no idea what to do. And as she said, the Korwa man expected a hero's welcome when he came home with this. But it was the tribal helpers who told her how to cook it. But it made me focus on how we've lost the art of nose-to-tail cooking, which all these women knew. Now we put only the choice cuts into bandi curry. So I'll stop here with just one very interesting line I read some time back, which referred to food as a visual archive of survival. And I think that's how I see Korwa food after documenting and writing over many, many years.
Thank you so much, Kaveri. Please, you can clap louder. Each of Kaveri's books, and especially her latest offering, Kurg, the cookbook, has been, she's been researching it for about 9 years. The books earlier to this sometimes went into decades. So it's not something that she takes for granted, her Kodavati heritage, but there is research, and I just want to just read one passage from her book, and it's so sensorial, and in that setting, just imagine when she comes back to talk about another aspect. It says, inside smoky kitchens and ancestral homes, I peered out onto the courtyards lit by flaming torches, where oracles, resplendent in towering headdresses, roamed, blessing the members of a clan. While I helped women prepare food for feasts, our exchanges in these spaces were always informal, enriching, and generous, with shared knowledge in a clan-bound society. I learned the importance of being invited to participate in the intimacy of an ancestral propitiation ceremony, not my own, building connections and trust that allowed the sharing of food and life stories, part of an invaluable oral heritage rooted in the land. And it's just such so beautiful, and like I said, we also have a young author. Is this your first book, dear?
Can everyone hear me? Yes, I'm a chef by training, but
Yes.
this is my first coffee table. This is my first venture in the literary world.
A little louder, I think. It's on.
Hello?
No, I think there's a
Can
problem
everyone
with the
hear me?
mic.
Okay, perfect. No, so I am a chef by training. This is my first venture into the literary world and my first coffee table. So,
Yes.
first
Tia's book, Arukala, like the cookbook, both, of course, have beautiful writing and stunning imagery. And I think we'll talk about that a little later. So, Tia, Arukala, that's the word for kitchen, right, in Malayalam,
Yes.
is anchored in Kerala's homes, kitchens, rituals, and the lived experiences of the women who keep them. And your grandmother is clearly somebody who inspired you a lot, and you learned a lot from her through osmosis. And also, is there a recipe which brings you closer to her? We do know that we lost her earlier this year, so something that still in the ritual of making that dish, something that reminds you of her, or any other aspects you'd like to share with us?
Absolutely. So, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, we have to start with who this woman is. I mean, everyone's grandmother is special. Everybody thinks their grandmother's cooking is the best, and you know they add so much richness to their lives. In my completely biased opinion, mine was a cut above the rest. So the thing with her was she was so there. She was a loud, proud Malayali woman, but there was also a very quiet resilience as to how she worked in the kitchen. Because she was never interested in the kitchen to begin with. She never gravitated to it naturally as most grandmothers do. She started after her marriage. So that was, I mean, that is what you do in her generation. Once you get married, you learn how to cook for your husband. So that was where she started. But then it so turned out that she happened to be the best cook in our family. And there was this beautiful contradiction that can exist only in a woman. And she was the matriarch of our entire household. So there was this whole idea for the book came in during the pandemic. So we would sit in her flat in Coimbatore. She had had an accident, and I, quit my job to help my mother take care of her. And we would have these beautiful conversations. And this is when I learned so much more tips, and I realized that housewives and homemakers have so many more cooking tips than I ever learned in culinary school, which was news to me. I mean, it's amazing because there are some things that only home cooks can tell you. Exactly, I'm sure all the women here know. And the thing is, housewives, the word housewives has come to have such a negative connotation in today's world, but I keep thinking, what an absolutely painfully beautiful thing to be. You know, it is the ultimate selfless act to be a homemaker and housewife, and to cook for the ones you love. It is the ultimate act, and their happiness comes from feeding people, and that for a chef, that is why we do what we do. So that is mainly why I did the book. And the recipe that comes to mind is definitely her red fish curry. So it is red fish curry, which is usually known as Kalyana Meen curry. It's from Kottayam. It's a very traditional, it's spicy but not blow your head off spicy. It's a very nice kind of spice that makes you want more. So, and her recipe was a little different from the rest, which you can see in the book. She added, not a lot of people do this, some people do, she would add tomato puree to her fish curry. And that would kind of balance the whole thing in a way that not many of our family members did. Her red fish curry is the main recipe that comes to mind when I think about her and who she is and what she represents. Because the fish curry also, the red fish curry of Kerala, also has a resilience to it. Because it started out as a curry that you kept for weddings for 3-4 days. You could keep it out in the open for 3-4 days without refrigeration. So it basically refused to go bad. You know, and there it reminds you of the resilience of the housewife and the homemaker and the grandmothers of our time, which don't get enough credit. They don't get enough spotlight. The chefs get all the glory, but where are the Michelin stars for the housewives, right? And in my opinion, they deserve much more than 3. So yes, that mainly is the recipe that comes to mind. And while my colleagues were chasing Michelin stars, I was I was in the race against time because I knew I didn't have a lot of time left with my grandmother, and I knew I had to use whatever time I had left to document every tip and every recipe that she would give me. So that was the main thing.
Thank you so much, dear. So I just wanted to mention to all of you, I am a dancer and choreographer, of course, and like I said, I'm a foodie too. So it's always a sort of dichotomy in my life. But I wanted to tell you, I'm always looking for cross illuminations and similarities between seemingly sort of connected fields. Um, so do you all know that in dance we have the Navarasas, the 9 types of emotions, which were earlier the Ashtarashas in the Natya Shastra, which was written 2000 years ago. And at the same time, there was a book written on Ayurvedic cooking called the Charaka Samhita, which also has the Shad Rasas, and they're very similar, the rasas, as emotion and taste. So also the concept of rasa itself, common to both our fields.
I think that's the thing, food crosses borders.
Yes, absolutely, transcends all boundaries, yeah. So, Kaveri, I'm going to come back to you. You are, both preserver of the Kodabar lineage, and at the same time also place yourself at a point where you speak of the relevance of traditional wisdom in today's times. So I have a question for you, which is that in this alchemy of food, traditional wisdom, landscape, memory, how do our culinary lineages etch themselves into the map that of who we are, and also our ancestry, a sense of belonging? Given your long engagement with preserving Kodaba culture, do you hope this book might spark a renewed sense of connection among the younger Kodavas, or even, of course, readers globally?
I think I'm going to use the words of one of my favorite writers to sort of set this off. Robin Kammerer. She refers to her writing as a reciprocal relationship with the living land. And I have read long and wide, and I have not come across a more beautifully expressed phrase which encapsulates my own experience, both of writing The Vanishing Kodwas and now the cookbook, because it is a relationship with the living land, and it's reciprocal, and it sums up the entire ethos of the Kodwa way of life, which is one of responsible stewardship and reciprocity. So when we talk about this food, and as you said, the cultural and the identities which become intellect, this is a book about food, but it's also a book about place. And the food is so deeply embedded in the place that you cannot separate the two. I mean, you just have to associate one with the other. And I think that when we cook, we're actually cooking to recall the taste of a place. And food, from this point of view, also becomes a kind of a translator of culture. You use it to express who you are. You cook food and you put it on the table and you say, this is what I eat, this is what I am. And I'd like to share one small episode from my own life, which I frequently share with people when talking about food. I was going away to live in London. I didn't know for how long. I was a graduate student, I was married. I had no idea where I was going to live, who I was going to meet, what kind of a kitchen I was going to have. But one of the first things I packed was my large copper steamer, Sakala. I had no idea what, and my very new husband thought I was completely batty. How am I going to carry this thing? But I did carry it, and I did cook korwa puttus and curries to a huge international bunch of friends. And what I was saying is, I'm Indian, but I'm Korwati. This is my food. So I think what happens when we leave a place, we carry it with us. And we use food as one of the primary means to express this place. And a few years back, I had a very beautiful experience where a young woman from Sydney wrote to me. She is Korg, and her parents had migrated there more than 25 years before. And apparently they talked about home every single day. And she wanted a special recipe to cook for a particular anniversary and surprise them. And she described it so beautifully. She said, when the aromas of this dish spread through the house, she described her parents' surprise and delight. And then they gathered around the table and they just enjoyed the meal and the memories poured out. And they talked about the monsoons, they talked about catching crabs in the paddy fields and everything around their home, which they'd left behind. So I think when we cook, it's the hunger that we have is for a taste of place. And I find that as you were speaking about the next generation, I find that as our food choices widen, and they are just widening every single day to the point of confusion, I find that we hunger for those tastes of place. And I'm sure there are lots of Korwas in the audience today who would immediately say monsoon foods, mushrooms, bamboo shoots, medicinal leaf. If you haven't eaten it, your year is not complete. You're unfulfilled in some indescribable way.
Right. Isn't it also the time of the, is it Uttara? The time to welcome rice into your homes, and it's happenstance that we are sitting here talking about, the imperative precursor to the table. Um, so beautifully said when you said food is the translator of cultures. I think all of us growing back, at least my generation that we before you, Tia, is we all grew up with our minds, especially when you talk about food being colonized, right? Because we were reading Enid Blyton's and Charles Dickens, and right, and where everybody sat by the bramble and ate cucumber sandwiches, or ghar pe dal chawal ban raha hai, right? So I'm part Konkani, so that would be Ambat and Batata song, whatever. And so rightly, both of them are talking about the concept of home revolving around food. And I travel madly, and I remember I would call my mother from various airports and say, can you please make me some dali toy? I'm craving it. So, and growing up in North India, South Indian food, of course, there was no concept of diversity. It was आप लोग तो सिर्फ इडली सांभर खाते हैं. So, we've got to have more books like this which speak about this rich cultural heritage that we have. Tia, coming to you.
I have a new baby at home, so excuse. I was just wondering if the house had burned down.
Okay. Tia, I mean, you have trained as a cordon bleu chef,
Yes.
and you, of course, are a professional chef. But in your book, you keep mentioning the importance of the home kitchen as the nucleus of all this magic that happens. Otherwise, you also mention the women and their beautiful stories woven through recipes in this book. And very often you use this phrase, which is cooks who feed the chefs. Would you like to elaborate?
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's funny how much we have in common as well and why we write about culinary heritage. When I was listening to Kaveri talking, she mentioned things like community, nose to tail cooking. Everything is so like, this is exactly why I did what I did Adukala as well, to preserve these things. And in professional kitchens, you have delegation. Someone chops your vegetables, someone cooks, someone washes the dishes. Who does that at home? All of this is the same person, right? All of this is the home cook or the housewife, whatever you would like to call it. So for me, I feel like I'm betraying my industry a bit, but to me, the food we make every day is so much more important than fine dining. Of course, fine dining is an art, and we respect it and admire it. But there's a soul in the home kitchen that doesn't come in a fine dining restaurant, and there's a reason all of us crave to come back home and eat, dal chawal or whatever it might be. So to me, that is why it is so important to preserve heritage and culinary heritage in particular. And yeah, so the cooks that feed the chefs, I think we talked about that on call. That was why I did this book. The dedication was to the cooks that feed the chefs, because the chefs have awards, the chefs have glory, but the home cooks are the ones that do the real work. I mean, of course, the chefs do crazy work. I'm not taking anything away from that, but yeah. So this book was for the cooks that feed the chefs, and to kind of come back to who it was dedicated to. My grandmother, we lost her this year, and she there was the best way to describe her. Her village is called Mamlesheri in Kerala, and the best way to describe her was a Mamlesheri morning. She was kind of the definition of a Mamlesheri morning. She was calm sunlight that promised a new day, and there was with a steady river flowing to wash away yesterday's sins. She forgave everything. Thank you. Because that was who she was, and that was why she was so inspiring. That's what made people gravitate to her. And even the cousins in the family would always come to her rather than their own mothers to talk, because that was who she was. And that really was the nucleus of what the book was about. And her name is Amu George, no one quite anchored you quite like Amu George did. We sat in, this book was a product of the pandemic. We would sit in her flat in Coimbatore. There was a pandemic raging outside, and I would be sitting with her drinking, I would make ensure for her and chaya and whatever else she needed. And we would be sitting and talking for hours and she would tell me about her childhood that was so idyllic, it had to be written about. It demanded to be written about. And that's why I took the plunge. It's my first foray into the literary world, but I knew I had to do it for her. And I'm going to do a little bit of reading from the book.
Please do.
Just to bring you back to what inspired me to do this book. It was her childhood, and this was it went a little something like this. In a small southern village in India, a mighty river flows. On the banks of this Muatapura in Mamlesheri stands a house that is testament to the glory of the Kerala Taravad. Annie Thotum, with its slanted red tile roof and wraparound porch decorated with renovated canoes, the color of samandi podi, and giant brass urns brimming with water lilies. Within this house, the first matriarch presided over her family of 10, made up of a husband and 9 children. Her helpers, all women, made halwa, dried mango thera, and chakka kumblapam, wrapped in the leaf of the jackfruit tree, made from scratch, endeavors that could take hours when they were not involved in the 7-day 4 meals a day routine, which also included the time-honored tradition of Nalumani, or tea time. Today, the house matriarch and the wife of the youngest son continues to produce meals for the extended family, many of whom are no longer residents of India, but come home when they can, hungry for food and family. The women in the family still glory in a cuisine that has remained essentially unchanged for over 100 years of their own history. Creating unforgettable food is a kind of sorcery. Kerala cuisine can often be deciphered and shared through recipes, but some will remain forever secret and only partially communicated because of a little something called kaipunyam, or the gift of the hand. It's similar to the discovery of umami as the fifth taste, an ode to God or the blowing wind. Umami cannot be seen or touched, but only felt. Kai Punyam is for Malayalis what umami is for the rest of the culinary world. It is what makes the same recipe taste very different when made by various individuals, even in the same adukala or kitchen. The worst thing anyone in an adukala can hear is yes, yes, very nice. Conjurers of unforgettable dishes want their food to shake you to your core, make you question your life choices and wonder why you never tasted this particular dish before. Food should be both exciting and satisfying on a molecular level, much like falling in love. The juxtaposition of a firework of flavor and a subtle hand shows in each bite at the family table in Mamlasheri, and my own in Bangalore, over which my grandmother still presides. She has taught me not just about the love of cooking, but love of every kind, as have the others who speak through these pages. Through their recipes and the human stories behind them, we continue to celebrate the past, present, and future of some iconic dishes, now shared in an act of typical Kerala generosity with you. Thank you.
That was beautiful. So, is the book available at the
Yes, it is available at
the store?
Ataklata's
Okay.
bookstore. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, there will.
So we are waiting for Kaveri's beautiful book, Kurk, the cookbook, to also be released next month. And I think you should all turn up for that too. And I'm sure I could see some of you salivating over there when she was reading.
Good, then I did my job.
Yeah. Do we have about 10 minutes left? 5 minutes, that's it? Oh, okay. So I make it 7. So are you okay if we skip the Q&A and let them talk? Or do you have very pressing questions? You do, okay. Is that okay with both of you? But one last very quick question to Kaveri and you, Tia. I've always felt that artists and of course cooks and now food writers, we're like receptacles, you know. We're carrying generations of wisdom, of the craft or the art that we propagate and perform. Also, we're constantly in touch with, and our work is influenced by various realities, whether they're political, geopolitical, cultural, and of course, even climate is a factor. So, would you like to opine on that? I mean, I think it's a two-pronged question about, of course, preservation and relevance, and also about how do you feel uh, we can find spaces for what is not really niche, but for us a reality every day, our specific regionality in this sort of age of homogenized, cuisine, presentation, all of that. Would you like to go first, Kaveri?
That's actually a brilliant question, Madhu, and in fact, I've dealt with it in the preface to my book, because when I began writing the blog, it was personal family recipes, very much like what Tia spoke about. I was hugely inspired by my maternal grandmother, who had an extraordinary range of cooking skills and gardening and beekeeping, and she had pigs and cows and chickens and everything in between. And her skills ranged from from foraging to preserving and understanding seasonality everything rolled into one human being. And initially, that's how the blog started. And then when I began research on this book, I think part of it stemmed from my first book, which was a very wide-ranging cultural and historical study. When I was in the villages, I was just exposed to things I had never seen before, aspects of my culture I had never experienced before. And what I've said, what I've expressed, is that my book just went way beyond the personal. It went deep into the heart of the community. And I think one of the areas that I'm very happy with is that it's interspersed. It is a cookbook. There are over 100, close to 130 recipes in there, and they're all local. And what I've really, what I love personally about the book are the stories. There are stories about individuals, farmers, beekeepers, rice. For today, rice is in such a crisis. There's some extraordinary stories of farmers who are trying to preserve indigenous varieties of rice. And then the women. I mean, yes, my grandmother and my aunts were very big, loving influences. And, you know, I was the least likely candidate for cooking. I was an outdoor person. But you just pick up everything. And then you go out into the wider society. And in fact, I have to say there's one professional award-winning chef sitting in the audience whose mother is the most extraordinary personality and cook. I mean, the home cooks, in fact, the title of that particular story, which deals with Timaya and his mother, the title is Home Cooks. And when you read her story and you see you know, exactly what you said, the distinction between what a home cook does and what a professional chef does. Staying up till late at night after all the cooking is over and you're making snacks, and you know everything. You know how to preserve, you know how to make things stretch, last, feed people. So yes, so my book just went a little out of control. It went beyond everything I'd anticipated.
I hope it continues to be controllable with unfettered energy and reaches all our homes. And I think, Chef, we're all going to head to Karavali, I think, after this. Tia, any closing notes?
Yeah. To me, I think preservation is so important in today's world, especially. I mean, I'm a millennial, so I saw the, you know, slow food era, and then we went to Instagram, and it just all went crazy after that. But I think the key to, firstly, I think the younger generations, you need to inculcate that from day one. If they see people interested in cooking in their homes, they will gravitate towards it too. Like my new baby, all he wants to do is put the coffee mocha pot on the stove and cook with a pressure cooker that he has no idea what to do with. But he's 1 year old, so but you know, he gravitates to it because he sees me and my husband in the kitchen all the time, because that's our safe space. So I think preservation wise, I think we need to do it more in our homes, and we need to expose the younger generation to our heritage cuisine, so they would also be interested in it. And I think, yeah, I think the key to, you know, going away from the homogenized cooking that you talk about is to, I think, just slow down.
So true.
You know, to slow down and actually, because we were all forced to slow down during COVID, and that is how Adukala was born. I slowed down. I was forced to slow down with my grandmother and sit and talk to her about Kerala cuisine and who she was and her childhood, and then it just captivated me, and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake the idea of I have to document this. So I think slowing down and actually practicing more at home, cooking more at home with your children, you know, with the new generations, I think that's the key.
Thank you so much, Kaveri and Tia, for creating these wonderful repositories which honor legacies and also create more. Thank you. And I'll quickly, I think we'll take a couple of quick questions before the BLF teams tell us time's up. One question? Okay.
No, I'm talking about Chef
Chef
Timaya.
Naresh Timaya.
He's sitting behind.
See, it is. Okay, that's not a question.
Sure.
Whatever we are doing today, I feel there is a vast hiatus between what we are doing today and what we did long ago. Even though you're trying your best to bring back our culinary heritage, but somehow, like the title of the previous book, I feel this culinary heritage is kind of vanishing, especially in cook, especially the concept of urkuda, you see. We all don't get together where we all sit and cook and cut vegetables and share things. That's now you just order, you have catering. So in a way, don't you think the heritage is disappearing, vanishing?
I think to some extent, yes. And in fact, I've spoken about it, how weddings are catered. And I think part of this is also because people don't live in the same place anymore. Earlier, you had concentrated societies. Now people are working in different places. But at the same time, I think if you look at this book, it's very heartening. We were talking about preservation. For me, the big surprise was the young people and their passion to go, and because I think they have realized even more than us what we will lose if we lose this heritage. So, for instance, I have this young girl who was an environmental engineer who, after she read my first book, she gave up her job and she went back. And she pestered her parents to spill out all the possible memories they had. And yes, we have, and then she went back and she found a space there and she's cooking, she's working, she's doing everything there. And I think you'll be heartened to read some of the stories about the young people, people who are bringing back beekeeping, people who are learning preservation, preserves, carrying pickles and jams and the glut of one season into the next. So I think it's a delicate balance. I mean, there are people who cannot do it, and there are people who are trying very hard to do it.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I am towards your left. Are you taking another question?
Where is, yeah.
Yes, I am here. So, during the conversation, I heard you mentioning about your grandmother, a professional chef's mother, and the most recent example of a young lady. I would like to know from you, in your book, do you touch the topic? When would this culinary skills and responsibility break away from its gender identity? And I'm talking about for majority of India, not just the niche population.
Yeah, interesting question actually. I think it's interesting. There's a real paradox that exists here because if you look at the home kitchens, yes, there is a very gender-based thing. It's mostly the women, but also if you look at professional kitchens, it's mostly men. So it is a very contradictory thing, and I think the breaking away from the gender bias is our job to do. It is our job to also give that responsibility to the men in the house and make them understand that it's not just on us. They need to help out. Because most of our households today, it's assumed that the men don't have to do the work. It's assumed that, of course, the women will take care of the dinner party and the washing of the dishes and this and that. And for me, I mean, in my home, I've made sure that, like, if I'm doing the cooking, my husband does the dishes. If my husband is doing the cooking, my husband and I are both chefs, so that helps a little bit. But if he is doing the cooking, then I wash the dishes. So the thing is, and it's not just, shouldn't go to the extreme of saying only men should do this either. The thing about feminism that most people misinterpret is that it is equality. it is a balance. It is not just the woman or just the man. Because I think today everyone takes feminism to a very negative direction.
Because misogyny should not lead to misandry.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We have to stop now because another panel is coming in. So on this note of empowerment, equity, and each of us being stakeholders, we will close this session. I would like to end by just showing you, since Kaveri's book is not yet out for the festival, this is it. And Tia's book is available, Adukala, in the stalls there. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you so much. Adukala. Adukala, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for